Welcome to Human Design Spotlight for today. Why Chiron? This question sent me down a massive rabbit hole that I'm probably still going down. My question specifically was, why is it that we can list the gates that Chiron is in on our human design chart, but Chiron isn't actually shown as activating them when we look at our body graph? So let me tell you the story. So this was at the time that I was doing my second lot of studying into human design reading. And during one of the live calls, I had the burning question because I've been noticing all these different charts becoming available with this special promise of you're going to get your Chiron. I had a reading. In the reading, the person talked about my Chiron. My Chiron was not activated in the gate she was talking about. I was confused. Confusion is not great for someone with channel 6447. We feel this urge to do something with the confusion. So I did. And the first part was to actually ask this person who was my teacher, who I assumed would have the knowledge. She did not. But hey, I'm a 1-3. What did that mean? That meant that I then went down a massive rabbit hole, starting with the question of why was it that Chiron wasn't included in the body graph? And this was a big search. It took me quite a lot of time to actually find the answer to that question. And the answer was quite simply this, according to something that Ra said. It was the fact that the body graph was created by the actual, planets that are used in astrology to create that. So it didn't mean that anything else could not be added on to explore further. He didn't say that you couldn't do that, but he said that the body graph itself that we get in our natal chart was fully formed just from having all of the planets, the planets that as we call them in astrology. So that was interesting. That answered my question, and yet I seem to not be at the end of the journey, to be honest. It actually ended up opening up the door then for me to explore more than just Chiron, because once you find out about Chiron, you then find out that there are all of these other things out there. And the first ones that I came across were the asteroids. I believe I was just searching for more human design books on my Kindle, and I came across a book about asteroids and human design by Kim Gould, who has become my current teacher and mentor as part of a group program. But reading her book probably opened up more questions as well as more answers. But what I realized was that understanding some of these energies that sit behind our natal chart can actually help us to understand ourselves at an even deeper, more individual level. So they ended up being extremely important, I feel, and I am still studying them. I mean, I've now gone off and learnt about astrology, which I didn't have at the start of this journey, simply because of this search for understanding how these other things impact us. They tell a lot more about the story of who we are than just those things that we see on our natal chart. The natal chart, I always say, is like the skeleton of us, the energetic skeleton, and then we can add in all of these other layers that actually make that skeleton into the uniquely expressed individual that we are right now. Some of that is about seeing what needs to be addressed to release. They can be magnificent guides for that. For the example, Chiron that I started with, is about helping us to see some of those wounding area or wounded areas that are kind of hidden. We don't want to address them until at the right time, Chiron will actually speak to us. So how does this kind of work? There's a whole lot of different things to this, and I will unpack it a little bit more as we go. But for today, I'm just going to say, the different objects are primarily named after mythical beings. That includes the planets, and they play into this to some extent. And because they are created to represent ideas that we have held as humans across time and space, this energy is, I believe, embedded almost in the soil that we walk on. It's embedded within our DNA. It's embedded within our psyche. And of course, it also forms part of, I suppose, the shared consciousness that we have as human beings. So there's this really deep knowledge and wisdom that's essentially handed down to us in this subtle way through these archetypal energies. So that's the first layer that I'm kind of coming at. There's more to it than that, but that's a good place to start. So let me give you a couple of examples. So I have in my personality sun gate, I have 3 goddesses. I have Hecate, I have Persephone, and I have Bridget. The first one I came across was Hecate. I knew about all of them. As from a kid, I read every book I could find on mythology. I studied up on them. I still, dip in and out of them as I get interested or not across my whole life. So I know quite a bit about, particularly, Greek, Roman, probably Norse gods more than any. But anyway, so I knew of Hecate, but I hadn't had an experience with Hecate. And I went and had a individual crystal sound healing. And during that experience, I actually had Hecate step forward. Now, I didn't call on her. I didn't even really connect with her at all. But she stepped forward, and that started an entire connection to that energy of Hecate that is still with me now, that is still guiding aspects of where my business is going. So that was amazing. More current example. Yesterday, I was on a call with Kim talking about soul biz, and for one of the activities that we had to do, we had to kind of repeat an answer to a question over and over to get down to the deepest unconscious levels of what was going on. And I finally got down to this particular phrase, something like, I'm not going to be boxed in anymore, something along those lines. Then in the evening, I was doing research and study on Eris for my learning at DPU. And in amongst that research was the phrase coming from Eris, I'm not going to be boxed in anymore, or something that was almost identical to what I had said. So the fact of the matter was that when I said those words, Mercury was activating gate 21, which is where my Eris sits. I was expressing Eris because of that Mercury energy. All right, that's probably enough for us to dive into now. There is so many more layers, and if you are particularly interested in this, I do have some things on my YouTube channel about the mythology and those kinds of things, but I'm also starting a series where I am looking at what happens when you have, say, the moon and Mercury at either end of your channel. What does that do to the dynamic of how you express that channel energy? So I'll put a link to my YouTube channel. You're most welcome to come along, subscribe, all of those wonderful things, and I'll speak to you later.